You are listening to Honey, We Made a Disney Podcast. Two friends, since one of us at least outgrew sleeping on the ground, most of the time at a friend's house, now guides on your nostalgic tour of Disney history, one magical film at a time. I'm JB Waggoner.
And I'm the aforementioned Eddie Ferguson. And on today's episode, we relive fond memories of the past and savor the challenge and promise of the future as we review the Disneyland Opening Day TV special.
So fasten that safety restraint and pull up on the yellow strap. It's time to open the vault.
Cue that Disneyest sound effect.
Sorry for coming at you, Eddie, in the opening thing for you and all your camping wares.
I probably deserve it after what I've put you through in some of the odd selections in our movie watching. Just a little bit. So
just a tiny bit.
Though I hope I redeemed myself today. I think this was a good one.
It was way less animals that they were trying to subjectively turn into narrative storylines this time.
So my first question off the bat was for you,
okay,
with far more production background than myself. How were you feeling internally as you could see the constant production mistakes and misfires on arguably one of it's a pretty historic day. This is a huge TV moment. And I mean, there are so many production misfires throughout this whole thing. How were you feeling? Were you feeling nervous for people?
Overall, I was pretty amazed that they would just flat out say, hey, there might be some mess ups here. We've never done this before. There's how many different cameras? They said the number of cameras.
29.
29 cameras.
And miles so I was of cable.
Yeah, and so I was almost expecting there to be more. I was expecting it to be worse, I guess, because they led with that, and they're like, "Ooh, did this test run just not go well, or what's happening here? Like, why are they giving us all of that detail now?" But I didn't see quite as many. Maybe you saw more than I did. There's nothing like the biggest one by far was Walt Disney restarting his entire talk before, was it Tomorrowland?
Tomorrowland. And he just looks up and he's like, somebody gave me the cue. You know, like you can kind of see him get a little flustered about it.
Honestly, what's funny was he didn't talk that much in this. Every time that he was up there, he did a very short bit. He had the shortest opening ceremony talk of any of the people, and it's his park. It wasn't that much longer than his iconic moment that you see even like written on at the park. He actually didn't talk that much in this entire thing. He kind of made his appearance, read the plaque, and then moved on to the next thing. It's almost like he was ready to keep working in the park and wanted to get past this whole shebang, this whole ordeal. The host actually enjoyed this more than he did, which was very fascinating.
Yeah, and I mean, if you know the history or like the stories, like they laid the asphalt for Main Street USA like that morning, you know, like I think it was like that night and a little bit that morning. He was making decisions the day before of, do we have drinking fountains or do we have bathrooms? Because the plumbers were on strike. And he said, well, it's the bathrooms, you know, that's a necessity. You know, these are the things that are going on. Women's high heels were sinking into the asphalt that day because it was so fresh. Crazy. The benches actually sunk into Main Street and everything. So yeah, no, I appreciate. So this whole thing is hosted by Art Linkletter, who's a famous personality of the time, and co-hosted. I love that he's the co-host by Ronnie Reagan.
I've never heard him called Ronnie Reagan in my entire life. Like my entire adult life, never heard him called Ronnie.
A lot of his, Ronnie. So we back where we're from in Indiana, there is the Ronald Reagan Parkway that goes through our whole county. My family and a couple of family friends, we affectionately call it the Ronnie, where we'll go, well, you just hop on the Ronnie and swing over to Avon because of his nickname and all this. So, yeah. So these are the hosts. I would agree with you. I love that Art opens the whole thing by like, okay, we're going to make a lot of mistakes today. I laughed out loud from the beginning on the way that he introduces it. He had 2 lines there at the very beginning that I bursted out laughing out loud. First of all, is he's like, this is going to be like covering 3 volcanoes erupting at the same time that you didn't know beforehand were going to start erupting.
But this was all planned. This is all planned. Why is this such an ordeal?
And then he says, so don't be alarmed if we cut to so-and-so, and it's some famous lady at the time, I can't remember her name, so-and-so, and she's fixing her bustle on the Mark Twain. I have no idea what any of that really means, but it was hilarious that this is how you start your TV broadcast that millions of people, like almost half of the country, are tuning in to watch.
And that's why I said, what happened on the practice run that went either so awful or they had 0 rehearsal whatsoever and nobody believes it's going to actually happen. Or maybe they're watching them pour asphalt and they
barely got this thing done. Barely got this thing done.
It's super intriguing. It's super intriguing to me because you're right. Like, this is obviously ABC, one of the national top 3 broadcasters, only 3 broadcasters. So I guess that maybe that says something to you. But to not be as prepared, it's just very interesting. And you kind of forget about it. Like, you going through and it feels more like a normal broadcast, but there's those little tiny moments where you're like, oh, this isn't nearly as polished as maybe you would expect there to be. Interesting.
Well, and I think we're more used to the Disney TV presentations of today, the Christmas Day parade, those types of things where it's very polished. All of these like certain pre-recorded things that line up and make it look like it's this spontaneous broadcast, but it's not. You know, they have come a long way from Art hosting here. But what did you feel about the opening? You know, he's there on top of the train station, and here comes Walt Disney driving the train in with the governor. The governor of California. Yeah, I mean, it's fantastic.
You get the train. It's definitely, of all the things he could have come in on, well, that's the most singular for him as well. Like, he, for a long time before that, had made his own train track around his own property, and he just wanted, basically, this is an extension of what that was for his own life with him and his grandkids. And he's just like, I want a bigger place for my grandkids to go to, so he's going to build a bigger train on a bigger scale 5/8 though 5/8. Like, how many times did they say 5/8 scale? And I'm like, I'm gonna have that burned into my memory. I've got it. I got it. And next time I go to Disneyland, like, that's 5/8. That's 5/8 scale. The horses were grown to 5/8 scale. I'm like, that's so specific. That's awesome.
Even they're in the golden horseshoe, and that ceiling is actually a 5/8 replica of the. I'm like, what? Why are
I'm gonna look that up while we're talking. It's, what is the magic about the 5/8 scale that like is so profound?
This is, I mean, just from the very beginning, it is fun.
Forced perspective.
I think it gives you the forced perspective. With Walt riding in on the train, you've got these cool kind of pan around Main Street and Town Square. I think what's interesting in it all is now, I mean, even if you're just a casual Disney fan, you know what Main Street USA is. Like, so many of these types of things are a part of kind of a common psyche, you know? And here, as you watch this, you realize this is the first time any of this has been done. Like, anything really even remotely similar to this. And so the way that they're constantly describing it is they're having to teach. They're like explaining This is what's going on, and yeah, I mean, maybe the overemphasis on the 5/8 scale, but nonetheless, like, hey, this is what you are seeing and understanding.
We also noticed, or Cole, my wife really noticed the fact that, especially when you're in Adventureland or Adventureland, I think that's the right spot. Or the Frontierland. There's still a lot of open space, like where
Yes,
Davy Crockett
Frontierland.
rides in. He goes a long distance, which I'm assuming like all of that now is all filled in with its own stuff. But you can the full trees and like the whole perspective you get now, where you are completely engrossed in this world and you can't even see any of the outside world at all. That was still growing up a little bit. So that was interesting to
Yeah.
see all of that open territory that hadn't been fully developed yet.
Well, in Frontierland, you had the mule ride, you had the mine cars through Nature's Wonderland. These are things that took up huge swaths of land that eventually become, Big Thunder Mountain and several other things. But yeah, there was a lot of real estate there, and I was taken back by, as you go through Main Street, Town Square, and even like the hub up near the castle, like, yeah, the trees, you just see how few foliage and trees there are. Where now one of my favorite things about Disneyland is the kind of the tree and how it feels so lived in, so
Yep.
old. You can kind of feel the history there. In this, you see that it's fresh, it's brand new.
So opening with Frontierland, since we'll stay there for a second. So Davy Crockett is like very prominent throughout all of this Frontierland part, and then they start his whole song and dance thing that goes on for a bit, and then everybody's dancing together. And my wife just turns to me and goes, and she loved the whole thing, but she turned to me and goes, "Oh, just a wholesome song about murder with people dancing with guns."
Well, that's what I love.
So good.
Art Linkletter hands this little kid a gun. He's like, "Fire it up in the air, call in Davy," and you're like,
just shoot this shot up there and hope that it's not a blank. Let's just hope it's a blank.
Things that would never happen these days. Before that, we had the dedication of Disneyland, the famous lines that I used in the opening there that are kind of now immortalized with Walt Disney. I think what was most surprising to me, like you said, Walt says very little. He just kind of reads the plaque, steps aside. The governor doesn't really say too much either, maybe about a double. But then we have clergy representing the Jewish, Catholic, and Protestant
faiths. All of them together.
All of them together. We have a silent prayer at the opening.
At the opening.
I mean, jaw was dropped going, wow, we have come a long, long way. Yes, indeed. And I also appreciated the just the wholesome, like, this is going to come across like I'm being sarcastic. I am not, but I loved the like wholesome, overt Americanism. Like, there was just an element where like, we're the only country who could pull off something this amazing, and we're going to celebrate that right now.
At the time, at least. Yeah.
I don't know. There was something like, okay, yeah, there's some things we can enjoy and love about our country.
I enjoyed Art Linkletter at the front saying, this is like, this opening is like Santa Claus with a $17 million bundle of presents.
I was just listening to a Disney History podcast earlier today, and we actually don't know how much Disney spent to make Disneyland. They refuse to share. There's like a number that they will kind of hint at, but
he was saying 17 million.
Yeah,
which
it's a
is,
lot
what
more.
is that, like $1 billion in today's numbers, maybe? Like, I'm not
I don't
joking. Like,
know.
it's like exponentially larger now.
For
However
sure.
many, almost 70 years later. Crazy that we're almost on the 70-year mark
Yeah, well, you
of the park.
think they spent $1 billion just to do Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. Yeah, at the time, that was the big announcement. Um, yeah, did you notice as he's kind of driving through Main Street and he says that and he's pointing out all the different things that are along the way, like there are men still up on the roofs of Main Street, like doing
Yeah.
something. And I
Yeah.
couldn't tell, but it's like
It
obvious
looked
there are.
like they were just watching, but you're right. Maybe they were actually working on parts of the park that were still undone.
I don't know. I don't know. It was a very, very odd.
So
Yeah.
I learned
So,
something new when they jumped to Tomorrowland. That one, Tomorrowland actually has a year
mhm.
that they had set way far into the future, 1986. Like that was
A
the
year
year
before we were born.
we were born, was the intended year, and that was 31 years after it opened, after the park had just opened. 1955 is the date of when this broadcast was happening. Just very specific, 31 years. Didn't know if you knew of any like super secret reason why they chose that. Um, but and it was, so one of the things they said was it was to be to happen around the time of Halley's Comet coming through town.
Which was
So I thought
86.
80,
Maybe that was it.
86, 86. So that's one of the reasons that they said it there. But then it's just something that stuck out to me is how big a part that just gasoline cars were a part of this thing, Autotopia. Like the highway of the future, I think was the terminology for it. But I'm like, they had cars in 1955. What was so special about this? Oh, and also no
So
bumpers on this. It was just, the cars themselves have bumpers, but no individual tracks like we have now, where it's like you're kind of straddling that line throughout everything.
so this is 1955.
Yeah.
The Eisenhower Highway Act was not signed into law until 1956.
Oh, so there
So
was already
we are
rumblings about this.
so we're a full year before the legislation is even signed to begin building the highway system.
Okay, gotcha.
So
Everybody's driving on they're taking Route 66 everywhere.
yes, we're a good like 5 years from first major highways really crossing the country. You're good 10 years away from being prolific. We're into the 60s and still the mother road, the Route 66 is really popular. Yeah, I mean it's well into the 60s before into the 70s even. Like a lot of your major bridges and infrastructure was built in the early 70s. You're welcome.
But that's still like a funny thing to be like, all this
That
new
is the future.
technology, flying
Yep.
cars, like toaster ovens and crazy other stuff, and then it's like
Cars.
highways.
Highways.
Highways are the future, and I'm like,
Well, and that's it,
did the
right? It's not
government just
necessarily
pay?
cars, it's highways.
Yeah, and that's what it's not. Yeah, you're right. It's cement in long distance form. Like that's our new technology, and it's so like It's such a then it makes me think. Hey, maybe the government was like, hey, let's start greasing the wheels for this new legislation that we're gonna have we can have the votes next year or whatever. It's just funny.
No, like we could get really sidetracked here. Yes, I have spent a lot of time studying the US highway system, and for those of you who are curious.
And the Wolf
Um
Highway system, the Blue.
um No, the US highway system, it's not necessarily the concrete and, all that. It's like that we intentionally mapped out long roads at high speeds to connect our country is one of the greatest innovations we did as a country. Like it revolutionized all commerce and all, culture of the United States, you could say. Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty huge, significant thing. It was stolen from the Germans. I don't know if you know this.
The
It's
Autobahn?
Yes. So the Germans had a huge highway system, and even as the Nazis invaded the rest of Europe, they began building these highway systems, and it was one of the reasons why they were so effective in military endeavors and in invading other countries, is because they had that infrastructure behind it. So when Eisenhower became president, that was one of the first things he said is, "We're going to do this here. We are going to blanket the country in highways." For commerce and for defense.
So
There's
fascinating.
also, here's a little interesting fact. I can't remember what it is, but like so many miles or so, there needs to be a certain distance that is completely straight. And you'll see giant arrows painted on there. That's because all of the highways can also double as runways.
I heard about this and I wasn't sure how totally true it was, but it makes sense. That you can literally land up. We could land all the planes at any time. Now, who knows all the planes? But you could land.
Not a
planes.
Boeing.
I'm not a
Not these days. Yeah, I loved. So while we're in Tomorrowland, seeing like the pre-show video of the rocket to the moon, that was really cool. And I'm like, I wish I could have gone on that ride. Like,
is that what that
was?
I missed the setup too. All of a sudden, we're watching a fake rocket go off, and I was like, "Wait, how did we get here? Is this just part of the experience?" But you're saying this was actual ride that you go to experience the
Flight to the moon, where you sat in a theater in the round, and there was a screen on the floor and a screen up above you, and it kind of mimicked
That's cool.
a flight up and around the moon. What is crazy is while they're constructing Disneyland, the plan was Tomorrowland wasn't going to open until summer of 56, so a whole year later. So the whole idea was Disneyland's going to open, and this whole land is going to come a year later. However, in the Disneyland TV show that we reviewed the first episode several months ago, they were going land by land, right? They did a show from Tomorrowland about going to the moon. Like, what would it actually take to make it all happen? That segment became incredibly popular. So much so, it airs on Sunday night. Disney gets a phone call from the Secretary of Defense and someone from Eisenhower's office saying, "We want a copy. Like now." And somebody from Disney hops on an airplane Monday morning. So it airs Sunday night. They hop on an airplane Monday morning, fly out to DC, and spend a week showing that segment of the Disneyland TV special about this dramatization of going to the moon, which I think is a part of what we saw there in this special. And Eisenhower sees it, all the people at the Defense Department, everything, and many will credit it as like the birth of, we now have to do this. We now have to accelerate our space program.
The mandate comes later, right? JFK's mandate comes later.
Kennedy. Right? Yeah, but it becomes it goes into the zeitgeist. Like, Davy Crockett's done. We now want to go to the moon, and it becomes so popular. Already done. It becomes so popular that Walt Disney walks out over to Imagineering and says, "We're not going to wait. You have 6 months now to get this whole land done. It's going to open with the park."
AKA why it was so much like not rushed in, but kind of was.
Well, and even as they kind of pan through and everything, you're like, yeah, this is sparse. There's not a ton there because they had 6 months notice that, no, you're going to do it now. So halfway through building the whole park, he goes, "We're going to put a whole new land in on here for opening."
That's so crazy.
Yeah.
What's the next land do you want to talk about?
Um, what do I got? What do I got here? Well, I loved that before we leave Tomorrowland, I loved this shameless plug for the Disneyland hotel coming. Um If you haven't watched yet, there's a great show on Disney Plus called Behind the Attraction. That's a
Yep.
lot of
Mm-hmm.
fun. It's really kind of just a playful way on what's the history of these different attractions.
We
In the
learned a lot
first
from that
season,
episode. Yeah.
they have one on the Disneyland Hotel, and I honestly, it was one of my favorites because I learned so much. There was just like, oh wow, I didn't realize about
It
the
was owned
development and
by
everything.
somebody else for a while.
Yeah, well, the guy I'm blanking on his name, but that was who Art is talking to there and all of that. So I saw that and I'm like, oh yeah, that I remembered that episode and loved that so much. Back to Frontierland, there was the two things that I loved. I loved the christening of the Mark Twain. That is probably for me one of the uh, underrated attractions at any Disney park is the big paddle boat, the Mark Twain riverboat. Love that. And then I also love that they, even though New Orleans Square doesn't open with Disneyland, you can already feel like this is what they want to do. This is where they want to go and have something. Because even here in the opening, there's a lot of emphasis on New Orleans jazz, and they kind of make it seem like there's something New Orleans-y there, even though it's not there yet. I thought those were two elements that I thought were really, really cool.
Me and my wife debated a little bit on, is New Orleans Square a land in Disneyland, or is it just a segment of Frontierland, segment of Adventureland?
Well, I mean, it's presented on the map as a separate land,
As a separate land.
area.
It kind of morphs. It kind of just like blends in
because you
between
have
the two.
You have Haunted Mansion and Pirates as the attractions. And now about to be a third. They're gonna pull in Splash Mountain, now Tiana's Bayou Adventure,
Into the bayou. Yep.
into and kind of create a much more. So I mean, now definitely with
It
three
definitely
major
is, yeah.
attractions, yeah. Coming over to the what I thought was going to be the final land, but for whatever reason they saved Adventureland for last. Almost like they forgot about it. Did you notice that at the very end? It was like, oh yeah, in Adventureland, let's show you 30 seconds.
30 seconds. That I basically missed it because it happened so fast.
So fast. But the main attraction is of course Fantasyland, and answers the question that I know you've had for years now. Yes, the drawbridge works. At least once.
At least once.
How creeped out were you by Mickey and Minnie?
So honestly, I had to leave right as Fantasyland started, so I didn't actually watch all of the Fantasyland parts. You're gonna have to catch me up on that.
I cannot describe this. You
Hold
have
up. Do I need to stream it while we're sitting here?
Mickey and Minnie. So while JB is looking this up, so the section on Fantasyland is a trip. It's Disney just pulling out all the stops. It's all of their famous characters. You've got some princesses, Peter Pan and Hook, and everybody running and just frolicking around, and they're hopping on the carousel. They're getting on the teacups and just kind of enjoying it all quite a lot. And as all these different characters are coming through, the earliest editions of the Mickey and Minnie Mouse costumes in the park come running by. Now, mind you, these come from the Ice-Capades. Disney hadn't yet realized, oh, I need to have the big, characters in the parks. And at the last minute, they say, we need Mickey in the park. And they borrow this costume from the Ice-Capades. And if you're watching the video version of our podcast, you can see what I guess JB just saw a picture, maybe, of this.
I just saw lots of people running, just running everywhere. Running. Oh, hold up. I think we found it. Hold up. Let's see. This is great audio. Oh, they have giant heads.
But look at their mouths.
Oh, it's so weird. It's so weird. Why did they look like that?
I don't even know how to describe this. It's like they needed mesh for the person to be able to see through and breathe, and they don't try and hide it. And instead of like incorporating it, it's like these weird squares that almost create like a jack-o'-lantern effect.
A jack-o'-lantern, it's jack-o'-lantern Mickey is what it is. And it's super unsettling. Yeah.
Like, you know that horror film that just came out about Steamboat Willie? When this version of Mickey comes into public domain, they don't have to change a thing. He can be the horror figure. Yes, so you all, if you need to stay up late through the night and
not sleep,
you just Google a picture of what Mickey Mouse looked like on opening day. You will have so terrified to fall asleep that you won't sleep forever. But yes, the opening of Fantasyland is quite this escapade of just Disney characters all over the place. My favorite moment, though, from this opening is Art Linkletter in front of Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, trying to explain what is Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. And it is hilarious. And he goes, well, let's just, he explains, he gets up to the point where I'm like, is he about to tell everybody, like, you go to hell? Like, that's what happens in this ride? Like, and then he goes,
explain that to the children, Art.
Yeah, explain. And he goes, well, I'm going to let you ride this for yourselves and find out what happens. But this is one of those rides where kids, you're going to want to go with your parents, and parents, you probably want to go with your parents as well.
Man, I feel like I missed the most exciting part of this entire show by running out of time.
Oh, it's great. Because then one guy is reporting live, because there used to be a big pirate ship right in the middle of Fantasyland.
Yeah.
And he's up on top of it, and the camera is from the other side of Fantasyland, and they can't find him with the zoom lens. And so they finally give up, then go back, and then they lose him again. It's just this funny little segment where, like, just have the camera right on the pirate boat. We'll get it. We'll understand that there's a giant pirate boat right there.
He's in there somewhere.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. One of just an honorable mention back at Tomorrowland. I forgot. There's the awkward sequence with, I guess, a scientist explaining to kids about, like, the telescope and all these different things, that it's just like early, 1950s Mark Rober trying to explain science to kids, but it's not Mark Rober. Like, this is not working.
Are you talking about the ping pong balls and the atomic age?
Yes.
Like, dedicating Tomorrowland to the atomic age that's coming. The ping pong balls, like that don't work the first time that they do it, and then they all work, and then it's just slowly, like, especially after watching Oppenheimer last year, it's like,
right.
Did we not understand the meaning? The meaning of Oppenheimer? Are we were we still living in the glow? Bad pun, bad choice of word.
Bad pun. Not funny.
Oh gosh. How could I forget this? How could I forget this? The start of Tomorrowland with the release of the doves, just the flock of doves that just get let loose at the very beginning. There's moments in this whole thing where you're like, that was a little understated. And then there's some things that are like, they couldn't have done crazier ideas if they had tried harder. Like, there's so many. And then of course Adventureland is just completely skipped over.
Totally. Yes, you have this whole releasing of the doves for Tomorrowland, just epic. And then Tomorrowland's, oh yeah, by the Adventureland, oh yeah, by the way, we've got this like Jungle Cruise thing that like goes back to you, Walt, you know.
That's not going
And
to become like
then
the most iconic ride in all of
right,
Disneyland.
where you're like the Adventureland is like, yeah, like
Major
you said,
part.
iconic, major part of the whole thing. For me though, I have to say my favorite moment is the very end with Walt and Art trying to like walk off into the distance. It is like the very last moment is by far the most awkward walk off. One, Walt doesn't know where to like put his hand on Art's back as they're
Oh
walking
no.
away.
Oh no.
They totally forget that they're wired in. Like wireless microphone technology has not been invented yet. And so they're like trying to do this and like try it's just so
It's so
awkward.
good. It's so good. He's having to reach back. It's
yes,
amazing. This
it's
is
so
okay, so hold up. If you know anything about YouTube right now, there's little spike marks where people
yes.
rewatch things over and over and over again. So like all of Disneyland is just one giant spike or the Magic Kingdom or the Disney Fantasyland is just one
Yeah.
giant like tons of activity. There's moments for like Autotopia with some of the famous people. There's some of the parades and stuff like that. But then the very end, which is when it should dive. Every time, every video just dives at the end. No, the highest spike mark is at that point where he's reaching back and he's getting like caught. It's so good. I love this. This is so okay. Now, having missed a couple of those moments, now I'm like, oh, it went off the rails right before I jumped out and couldn't finish it. This is amazing.
Oh, yes, yes. I go back to Art's thing at the beginning. This is exactly like covering 3 volcanoes erupting at the same time, not knowing that they were about to erupt.
But that's the thing. They knew exactly what they had planned on, unless they were
Right.
literally just making. There's no way they could have. Because who has doves just ready at a moment? Notice that we didn't know where the doves came from.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
This is
Yes.
by far, and I'm saying this lovingly because I love Disneyland. This is the least Disney production that has ever happened in the history of the company. Is this ABC broadcast of them opening the park? It's the most rush job I've ever seen of rush jobs from a public, like front facing, as iconic of a company as Disneyland. No wonder this isn't on Disney Plus. I couldn't find it on Disney Plus. I had to go on YouTube and find a really, really fuzzy recording of it.
Yeah. But that being said, like it's endearing. Like if you love the parks,
100%.
especially if you've been to Disneyland,
Like these are our people.
yes, there's something about it where you just like, I love this. I enjoy this. The opening of Disneyland is, of course, we now know, just like a historic moment. That day is a crazy day. One of the points that I didn't mention before, they didn't like, I don't know, like the way they made the tickets. Some guy just goes out and makes fake copies of the opening day tickets, and so they have twice as many people show up as what the park has capacity for. Because
Wow.
this guy was like, he got his and he's like, oh, I could make my own versions of this, and just starts doing it and making it. So I mean, the opening day of Disney is chaos. Like it goes down as like one of the hardest days possible. You hear people who work that day and it's just absolute madness and crazy. But they turned it around and the next day
Yeah.
started fixing things and getting it back. Um I would recommend after I finished watching this on YouTube, they had it was recommended to me the 10-year anniversary special. Much better. It's in color, and you're seeing a lot of like the World's Fair stuff coming in, like Abraham Lincoln, It's a Small World.
Did they shoot this on film this time?
I don't know. But that was like, oh, okay, here we go. This is kind of the Disney that we know, like production wise, and also you get an even better look at what Disneyland looked like. Even though it's 10 years old at that moment, it's still pretty early on in its history, especially now that we're coming up on 70.
There's dancing cakes. That's what I'm gonna
That's all
have
you
to
really
look.
need.
That's all I really need.
So before we go too far, I want to do something maybe a little crazy. You know how much I love ranking and doing all these things. There are a handful of these opening day attractions that are still open today at Disneyland. So either give me if you want to rank them, or maybe just like toss out your top 3 opening day attractions that are still open. They are the horse-drawn streetcars. They're still going there today. The Main Street Cinema, the Disneyland Railroad, Jungle Cruise, Mark Twain Steamboat, the Canal Boats of the World, which is now the Storybook Land Canals, King Arthur's Carousel, the Mad Tea Party, Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, Peter Pan's Flight, Snow White's Adventure, which has kind of gone through a few iterations. It is now Snow White's Enchanted Wish. And then finally, the aforementioned Autopia. Those were the opening day attractions that are still open today. JB, what are your top 3?
So mine weren't that hard to figure out. If I'm gonna go number 3, I'm going for this one. This has less to do with my desire to ride it, like in the sense of like you want to be entertained. No, this is purely economical. This is for all the Disney parents out there taking their kids to a park. When you can get your kids to ride this, it's gold and it's much needed rest. And that is the Disneyland Railroad. It's a classic. It's what Walt came in on. All the kids love it because they love riding on a train. But the big thing is sitting down for an extended period of time after a hard, long day of fun, but also standing and holding kids. The Disneyland Railroad is, I'm going to say, my number 3. It's one of the best for that reason.
I was actually going to put Disneyland Railroad, I think, as I was going to say like my number 1 of all of these. Because to me, like it feels like the most iconic Disneyland thing you can do. Do you know what I mean? Like,
not the castle?
Well, I mean, it's not on our list of like attraction thing, but like an attraction that you could sit down and like you said, sit, relax, enjoy. You go all the way around Disney World. Walt's love for trains, like he literally rode in on the train to come. Like the amount of history
was the
all
inception
there
for this. Yeah.
Yeah. Like for me, like the 2 times we've been, like I had to do the railroad. Even going to Magic Kingdom, like I have to do the railroad every time. To me, it just feels so iconic.
So we're gonna go backward. You're going 1, 2, 3. I'm going 3, 2, 1. This is great.
Well, what's your number 2? I guess I need to give my number 3.
Okay, you can just give all of yours away, and then
no. You go.
Guess what mine is.
You go.
I see.
You go. Your
number
number 2.
Whatever, Eddie. So this is a toss up. There's only 2 options here for me, and I'm gonna go number 2 is Jungle Cruise for me.
Me too.
It's easily one of the most iconic rides there. Basically feels like it's untouched. Like, you know how you just ride something, you're like, I don't think they've changed a thing about this ride since they started. Even the script is exactly like Walt himself wrote this script and everybody's following it. The backside of water, like things like that. You're just like, it's always going to be the same ride for the end to the end of eternity. And I love that about this ride. I love it. Again, sitting, big on the sitting, not sitting, waiting to get in line. It's definitely one of the longest lines to get in there, as well as my next one is going to be that too. But man, it's just immersive. It takes you into a new area in the water, through all, like, it's just it's so good. It's so great, and it takes you on a long adventure. Like some of the other water rides, you go, but you don't totally know where you're going right now. This, you're just like taken through this land, and so that's why number 2 is Jungle Cruise.
I think if we're talking like just Disney rides in general, um, I would say Jungle Cruise is like my favorite ride. I have the Jungle Cruise T-shirt. With Magic Kingdom, like I go there every time that I can, like absolutely, and all the reasons you mentioned. It's corny and funny, but also just so well put together. If you ever look at like an aerial view of either Disneyland or Magic Kingdom, it's amazing how they nestle that thing in there. Like it is literally right behind Main Street. Um, but when you're in it, you feel like
No idea.
you have
No
no
idea.
idea. You are in some remote jungle. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Love, 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 love Jungle Cruise.
Okay. My number 1 then. It's the one that I always end up getting in line for it because you kind of just have to. You kind of just have to take it. Enclosed, small, like in the dark ride. It always has the longest wait time of any of those Fantasyland rides for good reason. And it's Peter Pan's flight. I mean, you're flying over all of the city of London. I'm totally like geeking out about the fact that it was there from opening day. Like, what was different about it in the opening to now? Because some of those things I'm looking at and go like, y'all have updated this to be a lot more like you can see some of like projection mapping of stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I wonder what it would have been like to ride that ride all the way back in the day, when it first came out. Like, what was it different? But it's just such a cool, fun, like almost like lose your breath a little bit, even though knowing it's not that far down, of like looking over blackness as you're going from place to place to place, as a complete opposite in some ways to Jungle Cruise, which is outdoor, like big. This is so tight and intimate. And I think there really is something about the only so many people can get on it. So
Yeah.
the longer line, it's like it feels exclusive, like an exclusive
exclusive.
club. Ooh, it's below 60 minutes. Let's try and make our way onto the Peter Pan ride.
Well,
Which
and
is
I also think one of the things that they did with the Peter Pan ride was capture the moment from a movie that you want to experience, right?
good
Like
note. Yes.
this is what Imagineering really has started to hone in on. Okay, what is it that fans want to, what is that moment? What is that one kind of titular experience from the movie
Yep.
that they want to relive? You want to fly over London. Like you
Yep.
get done with watching Peter Pan. I want to fly over London with Peter Pan and Wendy and the boys. Like this is what I want to do. And as soon as you get on that pirate galleon ship and you turn that corner and you are flying over London and it's a little bit cooler, like you kind of go in and you feel the air, like it just like, even though if you stop and think about it logically for a moment, all magic can be washed away. Like, oh, I know how
Yeah.
this is happening. No, but like it's so simple, but it just takes you away and you're going, I'm living that moment from the movie that I wanted to. And that's what's so great about these, IP based rides is when they can really capture that moment.
Well, and this ride specifically is one of the few that they had when they started that had a very iconic character attached to it. I mean, you've got Snow White's ride, but I don't really care for that ride that much, or didn't the times I'd ridden it before. I guess you got the Mad Tea Party and Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. I don't know that you would say King Arthur, his
Yeah.
carousel, is like part of the experience. Jungle Cruise isn't. It's not IP driven, really. It's all a new experience. This is one of the few like iconic character and also really great like immersive ride. Yeah. So especially for that entire area, it's one of the best. And as much as some people would love the Tea Party and throwing their guts up, I'm just,
I
especially
can't do
not
it.
after this weekend,
I
definitely
can't
not
do
into
it.
that. Yeah.
So if this was just Disney rides in general, I would probably agree and put Peter Pan as my number 3. I'm working backwards. So Railroad was 1, 2 is Jungle Cruise, 3. But I have to say, because this is Disneyland, I'm going to be the weird one, which we all know I am. I'm going to go Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. I'm sorry.
Seriously? It's literally my number 12 or whatever number there is of here. That's where Mr. Toad is for me.
I know. It is such a simplistic ride system. It is literally scenes painted on like cardboard or plywood.
It's the worst. It has not been updated.
But
not even
think
tried.
It is like so weird and funny. Like so I'll tell you this. We wrote it when we went with you guys. Then you guys left because you were new parents at the time and we didn't understand just how bad that was. We went back and wrote it again.
No, you did not.
I laugh like a little child when I am on that ride for whatever reason.
No, stop.
There is something, this is as sincere as I can be.
I'm questioning everything right now. Everything I know about our friendship.
I just want to put it out there
better
that
than this.
I love Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. It used to be at Disney World, but they took it out a long time ago.
So it confused me when I finally watched the movie, Mr. Toad's Wild, and it has
almost nothing.
Zero to do with the ride, and I was so confused. Like, what? When are we going to hell in this show? Nope, never gonna happen. Ichabod gets closer to hell than Mr. Toad does.
This is true. Yeah.
So confused. Why, Eddie? Just why? I guess we needed something to fight about on this episode.
One thing that was not an opening day attraction that became like a huge complaint from the very beginning, from opening day. Did you know fireworks over the castle was not an opening day thing?
Interesting.
So after a year of the Disneyland story, which we've now watched the very first episode and then the opening TV special, if you remember, it opens and ends with fireworks over the castle and Tinkerbell flying over it, right? Like so everybody comes going, wait, you opened and closed every episode with fireworks over the castle and Tinkerbell flying over.
Whoa.
Where is
huge miss.
So they immediately turn it around. This is also on Behind the Attraction Season 2 nighttime shows. They talk about this, how they had to rush out and get a fireworks show. It's not until the Matterhorn is built that they can now do the cable and have Tinkerbell fly over. And now finally we get that. But that was not a fireworks show to close out the night, was not an opening day thing at Disney World, which blows my mind.
That is a big miss.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of the rush. I mean, you can't have everything perfect on opening day. I mean, everything else was flawless. So I mean, you got to have one thing that was missed.
At least one.
Least one. One thing I want to call out, we didn't talk about in here is parades. They had parades on from day one, and they've continued to have parades from then on.
That is true. Are you guys a sit and watch the parade, or is it like, no, this is our chance to hop in on a ride?
It is a great time to hop in on the next ride. And we don't usually stay long enough, or maybe we're just going during the summer times that it doesn't get dark as fast. But we haven't sat for a parade in a long time, other than if they've literally blocked all of the exits and
you can't get out.
Then you can't get out. But our kids love. We just watched one of the nighttime parades on YouTube tonight with my son. Right, but he wanted to watch before bedtime.
Nighttime parades is where it's at. Let's just say that. That trip with you guys was the last time I got to see the Main Street Electrical Parade. Very emotional experience. But yeah, nighttime parades is definitely where it's at. So this was on YouTube. Just search it on YouTube. I mentioned the 10-year anniversary. I wanted to make a public confession here now. This is one of my like weird guilty pleasure things. I enjoy watching old Disney specials. To me, they are so interesting, and there's whole YouTube channels like dedicated to this. Like Christmas Day, like in the afternoon while we're playing with toys and stuff, I will turn on old Disney parades, like Christmas Day parades from like the 80s and the 90s. Like something to me is like it's so nostalgic and comforting. We even like went in even into like the early 2000s with some NSYNC action and stuff. Um, just hop on there, do a little bit of exploring on YouTube with like old Disney specials. I don't know, something for me, it like stirs up all the nostalgia and I love it.
I was waiting for something bigger when you're like, I just gotta say that just let me break the news for you guys. And I'm like, this isn't even worse than you going back on Mr. Toad's Wild Ride.
That's a bigger. Oh, come on. You don't hate on Mr. Toad's Wild Ride that much. Like it's a pretty solid ride. You got to admit.
It's easily one of the worst rides in any theme park.
What are you going to rate the Disneyland opening day TV special? Is it essential? You have to watch this. Is it classic? Is it a 3? It's entertaining, 2 interesting, or no, let's put this back in the vault. Too many production errors.
The moment is essential. Like what happened because of this jumping off point for the park obviously is crazy essential. The actual production definitely was. They should rush this back to the vault, and they're bringing it back now to try to like get it. Like there's a reason this isn't on Disney Plus. Let me just say that they could have easily put this on Disney Plus. They own it, and they didn't want you to see it because it's a hot mess. I don't know if I'm just talking about rewatchability. Am I dying to rewatch this again? Not really. And if it's essential, I want it to be more that. So I'm going to go classic for, I think the moment is super big, and it is a moment that if you're a fan of Disney and Disneyland, you're not going to want to forget where it came from. So I'm going to go classic, a 4.
So I'm right there with you. I'm going to say a 4 classic as well. Mainly, I agree with you. The rewatchability is a little difficult.
And we just don't have that many good quality version of it. I think if this was actually filmed on film and they were reproducing it and remastered, like no, they have put no energy into that. I don't even know how people got copies of this thing to put it up online. They don't want you to watch this, I think.
Which is sad because I like the let's kind of go back in time. It's a bit of a time machine. I want to kind of see what did it look like back then. So if they could have a copy of this on film remastered, we can get a little bit better of a quality and see it more clearly. Like that would be a lot of fun. That would probably bump it up for me. But yeah, it's a 4. It's a classic.
Well, now that we are filled up on nostalgia, let's talk about a little bit of Disney news. And if you're listening to this right now, when this episode aired, today is the day, Wednesday, April 3rd. It's the day for the shareholder meeting, and we're getting a proxy fight, Royal Rumble happening today.
Voting on the board, 2 board seats.
And if you listen to anything or read any news or anything media related whatsoever about film, TV, etc., odds are you got an ad in some way, shape, or form from Disney. Eddie, do you know how much money they spent making podcast pre-rolls, YouTube pre-rolls, mid-rolls, all of the different blog, like there's ads everywhere. Do you know how much money they spent?
How much?
Just guess. What number?
40 million.
Ding, ding, ding. They spent $40 million to just fight in public about this thing. Isn't that nuts?
I heard 40 was going to be like the grand sum, like between the two sides fighting. But yeah,
No, I think that was just Disney. I think that was
just Disney.
Disney spent on that.
Yeah, I've heard it is the most expensive proxy fight in the history of proxy fights, or whatever that is. That's an area I'm not familiar with. Um, but yeah, it is, and it was leaked. I think Friday night. Somehow the Wall Street Journal got so voting ends on Wednesday, April 3rd. So you have to cast your votes before then. Over 40% of Disney stock is owned by individuals. Like grandma and grandpa bought Timmy a share of Disney stock when he was born. Those types of things. So that takes a while to come in. A lot of that type of stockholders don't even vote in these things, but that's why they're putting these ads out there, because that's not normal for a stock to have that many retail investors. It's really abnormal. And all of the investment firms and stuff, they haven't voted. About on last Friday, 20% of the votes were in, and Peltz, the proxy fighter, was winning.
Wow.
This was leaked. This information shouldn't have been sent out to the public, but somebody leaked it to the Wall Street Journal. Well, the Wall Street Journal ran it, so it must have been true. Like, they're not going to be publishing something that's fabricated. That shocked everybody. So it'll be interesting how this shakes out. I don't know one way or another. I'll be honest, I don't really care one way or another. I just like that this whole fight has kind of spurred Disney on to take some action and actually begin to do some stuff and change some stuff around. That's what I like. So whatever outcome creates more of that, that's what I want to have happen.
And they have. It's definitely spurred them at least to do some PR hits. Definitely some PR like, hey, look, we're going to invest in gaming. Oh, we're going to shelve some of our stuff. Oh, Moana is now going to be really on. And it has made some dent. I mean, their stock has trended up since Iger took on, and since after the first couple 6 months, 6 months. Yeah, this quarter they've been up a good bit. Like, there are positive things happening, but it is so weird to see someone you love just struggling, needing some help. Oh, and by the way, you guys still need to figure out who the successor is going to be.
Yes,
we're all still kind of waiting for you to tell us who that is, because you said it wasn't going to be you. So,
well, and I think that is the true reason behind the proxy fight. Is these major shareholders don't want another repeat of the Chapek debacle. And so they want to make sure that this is highly prioritized. And, Peltz in general wants a voice in it.
So funny. Well, speaking of April 3rd, there's a couple or Disney Plus in general. Let's just talk about Disney Plus has had a little bit of a makeover. Let's talk about that first. We're getting
they're now
a more
blue-green, a little bit of green mixed in there.
Yeah, kind of talking about how Hulu is now intertwined with Disney Plus. Found out that Hulu actually, even this isn't about subscribers, but I was just listening to The Town by Puck Media and The Ringer. They were talking about, and Matt Bellany, who's the host of that, talking about how on just like what their average subscriber, how much time they spend on the platform, Hulu is actually really high up there. Definitely not on the Netflix level, but they're high up there as one of the top like 4 or 5, like just their average viewers on their like subscriber, paid subscriber watches a lot of Hulu every night. And so I think this was a great decision by them, probably put on by Nelson Peltz and others. This is one way to kind of help their streaming stuff, getting more of that Hulu content on there, because Disney Plus people don't watch as much. It's more like, oh, I'm in the Disney mood, if they don't have kids at least. I want to watch some old Disney content.
Well, and they're doing something really interesting. If you are subscribed to just Disney Plus and not the bundle, like you don't have Hulu, the little icon will still show up in your app. It'll still be listed there. You can click it. You can review the whole Hulu library. You won't know that you are not a Hulu subscriber until you click to watch that show. That's when
smart.
you get the warning, oh, hey, you're not actually a Hulu subscriber. But hey, if you click this button, you can bundle Hulu with your already existing Disney Plus subscription. That's a smart business move. It's like, okay, that's hopefully gonna, drive more subscribers.
Yeah, but the new logo, shade of greenish blue, definitely didn't go unnoticed. So we see you.
We see what you're
Disney
doing.
Plus, you're doing. We also see that you finally are giving us Wish. It's finally here. Less about me that I've been dying to see it again.
You have?
It's just not at all. I haven't been, but my kids are super excited about it. My wife is curious about what all the hullabaloo of why it was so bad. She's interested to see. I don't even know if she's gonna watch it herself, to spend time watching it. But it is more. What's more interesting is the ramifications, because this is the longest spread between movie being released in theaters and it actually coming out on Disney Plus, and it makes me think Inside Out's coming out this summer. Are they even going to have that up before Christmas? Probably not. It might not. It might not be on the streaming channel for 6 months, 7 months, 8 months. So now, if you were thinking about this, even just kind of with this one film, if you were thinking about skipping out and just waiting for it to Disney Plus, they've kind of reset expectations, at least for me.
Which I'm a huge fan of. I love that. I love it.
Yeah. If I want to see it, I have to go see it in theaters. If I want to see it more than once, get another viewing in, I got to see that in theaters, or else it's not going to be out for a really long time.
I hadn't thought about that. I think Inside Out 2 would be a great, like, right before Christmas release. Like, they usually hold out something, get you, so you're watching with the whole family. Yeah, hold it. Now,
granted, there will be another Disney movie in theaters at that time, because you'll have
Moana 2.
But that's the thing. It's been on streaming for a little, not streaming, but it's been on digital release for a little bit. So they'll probably be getting people trying to buy it for their kids for Christmas and stuff. I just don't know that it's going to come out before Christmas if you don't see it this summer. That's just my guess.
See, I also wondered if they were holding Wish because they didn't want the terrible numbers before the shareholders meeting.
That and Eras Tour. They're also fighting with Eras Tour.
Why are they fighting Eras Tour?
Not Eras, but they didn't want to do, hey, let's not shoot both at the same time. Let's
for sure.
Go ahead and let's do Eras Tour right before the shareholders come in, before they're looking at it. Hey, we can get our numbers up. Don't want to put Wish in there before that.
True.
And it's like they've still got one more shot to shoot after, or like you're saying right here, the day of the. But I think you're right. Like waiting till literally the last moment before, like the day of the shareholders tour. It's like, or not tour, but thing that makes a lot of sense. Like wait till it's almost past the time where it can actually play a factor at all in people's in their minds.
Did you watch the Eras Tour?
Oh yeah, we did.
What's your favorite era?
I have no feelings whatsoever about which is a favorite or not favorite era. It was on, it was enjoyable. Production value was great.
Fantastic.
It was a ride. My wife had the time of her life. So
we watched it. We're not huge Taylor Swift fans, like we're casual, but loved it, enjoyed it. I would have to say my favorite era was the Red era. I thought that was fantastic. It's great music, but also fantastic production. Yeah. Good for them to grab that. Yeah. That had to have done huge numbers. I'm surprised they haven't. I'm surprised they haven't announced those numbers yet to help boost this proxy fight. We may even hear that right before.
Could just be enough. It was probably enough that they just had it. Like, hey, we had it. Nobody else did.
Yeah. One last bit of news. This is pretty big and breaks right before, of course, this big fight. Disney and the state of Florida finally make up and are friends again. If you've watched or heard the news over the past couple of years, they have been in quite the little tangle and fights, lawsuits, quite a few of lawsuits. Late last week, Disney and the state of Florida came to an agreement. You could call it a settlement, you could call it a truce, but they each gave the other a little bit of what the other one was looking for, and they have settled it, and the whole thing is now done. They want to move on. They want to move forward. So that is a really big
So what
thing.
does it all mean? Like,
so it means that Disney does not have full control and authority over the Reedy Creek Improvement District. So that was the big win that Disney got. The state of Florida got. The state of Florida got. Disney got a lot of concessions out of them where they have a little bit, one, they changed the board. There's people on the board who actually have experience in this industry. When it first came out, it was not. And now it's people who have experience in the different things that actually that Disney World is dealing with. And they gave, the improvement district is going to allow Disney to do a few different things, have access to certain, benefits and stuff that they didn't have before. So it's very much like a give and take. It was a very classic down the line compromise. There might be a few people who try and call this a win for DeSantis or a win for Disney or whatever. It's really not a win for anybody. It was pretty 50-50 down the line. Like, everybody gave up some stuff they really didn't want to, but people also got things that they really wanted. The big thing is now Disney can invest that $60 billion they had discussed in Walt Disney World. So don't be surprised if this August at the D23 Expo, they start making some massive announcements, because they have to, because Universal is creating a cutting edge theme park just down the road opening next summer, which you and I have talked about. Our sons are clamoring to go to, if nothing else, for Super Mario World and the How to Train Your Dragon World. Like, we watched that just last week, the announcement for everything at How to Train Your Dragon World, and like Lewis is chomping at the bit. He's like, when can we go? When can we do this? I want to ride. I want to meet Toothless. I want to ride on the back of a dragon. All of those things.
Friends again. Florida and Disney, just like peanut butter and carrots. I don't know. Actually, that's a good matchup too.
So there you go. We have given you your nostalgia, your news. But before you go, JB, I hope you and the family have a better week ahead. That sickness is behind you. You move forward.
I heard that there was Easter on Sunday. None of us knew that even existed on Sunday. It was just chaotic. It was a mess. I don't want to go into any details, but man, it was hit 4 out of the 5 of us. Just the baby alone didn't make it. This is the thing that is so upsetting. This is the thing that's so upsetting. I hear about these parents talking about how one of the parents gets it, and then the kids get it, then the other parent gets it. And it implies this idea that there is a living and breathing, lucid parent at one point or another that can pick up the reins when the other one needs the help. I would love to know what that means, because inevitably, especially whenever I get sick, I feel like sometimes maybe I get sick a little bit less. I don't know. We have to look at the numbers, but inevitably my wife gets sick at the same time. And then it becomes less, okay, I'm out. Let me just go be out the rest of the day and you take the kids. And it becomes more of, you got a good 30 minutes in you. You want to take them for a little bit. Okay. They're fine. Okay. It's nap time. The baby's nap time. Okay. Now we can both rest. Okay. Okay, it's got to get up, and it's like that back and forth. By the end of the day, we were feeling a good bit better. But man, when both parents are sick,
It's terrible.
It's terrible. It's the worst.
It's
So
the
any of you guys
worst.
that know that formula to let one parent get it first than the other, I would love to know what you do to get that, because
So here's what we do. So the last time I was sick, we actually missed recording because of this. I got sick first, and Sarah locked me in the room, and I didn't see her. Like, you just sequester the sick parent and pray to God that the healthy parent doesn't get it. Now, 5 times out of 10, it's a coin toss. The other parent gets sick too. Like, the bug's already out there. It's already in there. But I mean, the minute we're like, oh yeah, I'm sick, Sarah's locked me in the room.
Go into the closet.
She is getting Lysol. She begins cleaning and scrubbing everything, like disinfecting the whole house. But yeah, it's a coin toss. And when it goes tails up, man, it's terrible. It is the absolute worst. This is when Disney Plus becomes the best babysitter you've ever had.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And you just go,
1,000%.
we'll pick up the house later. Like, they destroyed that. Okay, we'll buy another. Like, it doesn't matter right now.
Take all the media devices, all the screens, just use them all. Just take them.
Free for all.
We don't care.
No rules, no just there. Go.
And our kids know the deal too, because we've got very specific rules about when we use the iPads. It's for trips, like long trips, not to the grocery store, like to trips. It's for school. It's for rewards. And it's also for sick day. They knew to grab them. Okay. We grabbed the iPads. We got those when we want to. It was like, we don't care. We're just getting through this. But
yeah.
Anyways, with that, we have finally gotten your not weekly dose of JB's horrendous weekend, but a weekly dose of Disney nostalgia.
Be sure to subscribe to Honey, We Made a Disney podcast wherever you listen to your other favorite podcast, and also give us a look on YouTube as well.
While you're there, please like or leave a 5-star review and share it with your best friend.
You can also check us out at our website, honeywemade.com, where you can see all of our nostalgic reviews of Disney movies.
Tune in next week as we review Old Yeller.
Thank you for listening, and remember, for all who come to this happy place, welcome.